Welcome, everybody. This is another book review, or should I say this time it's another short story review. That's right. We're going to take a look at Shirley Jackson, The Missing Girl short story. As much as I would try to use an official synopsis on books, movies, or anything media in general, Shirley Jackson, The Missing Girl is just one of those tales that just doesn't have one. I'm aware it's a short story and that it may be a factor of why it's hard to find something official for a synopsis. So here's a rundown of what I think you'll get out of the short tale. During summer camp, a 13-year-old girl goes missing. People gather in search of her, but as the search drags on, they start to question the situation. My review of this short story. Betsy is part of this summer camp for girls aged 12 to 16. She recalled the night her roommate went out. Days go by, and eventually lead in Betsy, our main protagonist here, to tell the head lady of the camp, by the name of Jane, that she had not seen her roommate since that following Monday, and it's now 5 days later or so, 3 days. From there, we learned that this camp's roommate is entitled as Martha Alexander, which is fascinating, and that the story unfolds more, there's a lot more that seems to be going on. Hitchhiking comes into play. The family mentioned that she had not been back home, like her regular visits from school, and she normally would visit. Now the story continues, and as we proceed on, we start to realize that this Chief Hook mentioned that the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts had joined the search to try to find this missing Martha. As days went on, the search was starting to go nowhere, and there was no signs of this missing Martha showing up at all. To the point where the Boy Scouts left the search because they felt like it was not going anywhere, and it felt like the Girl Scouts were soon to follow the Boy Scouts. From here, it really starts to get interesting with the twists and turns of the father of Martha, stating that the children have come and gone to different states, except one, who actually stayed home. And then, as for the twist itself from the summer camp, well, if you haven't read it yet, I hate to say it, but it kind of gives us this idea that there's no record to show that this person was even here at the summer camp to begin with. So let's look into some fascinating stuff about this short story, shall we? And I'm going by now physical items that you can actually try to find an actual copy of besides just short story book here, which it's actually titled Shirley Jackson, The Missing Girl, and it's available on Amazon or wherever you can get your books. I happen to get it from Amazon. Now, before reading this, and before I want to continue on with this presentation of my review, per se, which if you don't want to listen to me, you want to read it yourself with the images that I'm about to be providing and reading from, you can go on hauntedvermont.org and review the Missing Girl article, and you can see this next, newspaper clipping to help this out. Now, I want to point out there is a magazine, or magazines, I should say, but one particular one stood out to this, quote, Missing Girl thing. Now, I want to first thank Jamie Franklin of the Bennington Museum to help out with this as far as information goes. Back in December of 1957, there was a magazine entitled The Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. From there, they did an article about Shirley Jackson, and inside of it featured Paula Weldon, where they titled it as Step by Step with Clues to Missing Girl. Paula Weldon's father is mentioned as well because of the fact that his daughter is missing. It really showed the love and motivation he had to track down any information about the whereabouts of his daughter. It mentioned a $500 reward for any information at all leading up to Paula Weldon's disappearance. But at one point, the reward eventually reaches the enormous amount of $5,000. Which is roughly $83,100 in today's money as of late 2025 from 1946. But I want to also point out, a lot of people think because of this article, and I can understand why, that they would think it's about Paula Weldon, this missing girl story by Shirley Jackson that was supposedly published in 1947, I want to also put out here. But if we actually look into the details of the weird disappearances that were going on from 1945 to 1950, there's actually a name that hardly gets mentioned, and I did some digging. And after reading this short story my own, well, to be honest, I don't think it's about Paula Weldon at all. An actual missing girl. So from here, I wanted to really tackle some interesting points that Shirley Jackson brings up in this short story. The missing girl, Martha. Let's go back to November of 1950, where there was an actual 16-year-old girl named Martha Jeanette Jones who was hitchhiking from Bonneville, which is part of Winhall, Vermont, and she was traveling to Manchester's center. If one were traveling by foot, let's just say for this example, it would be taking more than 4 hours to walk from Bonneville to the Manchester Center here in Manchester, Vermont. But if she were to be hitchhiking from Bonneville to Manchester Center, by car travel alone, it's roughly 20 minutes tops. Again, I want to also mention, if you would like to see some more, especially a map Google, so you can kind of see the layout of this route that Martha Jeanette Jones possibly have taken for hitchhiking, we can see this Maps Google link on hauntedvermont.org under this review of the Shirley Jackson, the missing girl. Now, back to it. The strangeness about this missing 16-year-old Martha is that it wasn't mentioned that she was last seen in November until a month later. Now, I want to put a pause on that real quick, and I want to go to an actual newspaper article that was published in December 21st, 1950, which is also interesting because another article was mentioned around the same time frame. Now, let's take a look at this one real quick. This one is entitled, 6 Persons Disappear in Southern Vermont in the Last 5 Years. And if we look closely, it starts to say, the disappearance of 16-year-old brown-eyed Martha Jeanette Jones of Bonneville, who vanished a month ago as she hitchhiked to school in Manchester, raises the toll of missing persons in the southwestern area of Vermont within the last 5 years to 6. Her disappearance was not discovered for a month because her family thought she was at school. Now, put a pause on there from the newspaper. Now, go back to what I was just kind of detailing about Shirley Jackson's The Missing Girl story. She's talking about a summer camp school or something. It almost sounds like a school, either way, from the way they kind of describe it, which right now I did forget to actually write down the actual name of this camp, but eventually somewhere the word school does go into play with this short story. Alright, now let's unpause from the newspaper clipping and continue reading. The series of baffling disappearances started 5 years ago when Mitty Rivers, a 75-year-old hunter, vanished near Bennington. 4 years ago this month, Paula Weldon, 18 of Stamford, Connecticut, was last seen near the foot of the Long Trail. James E. Tedford, 65, disappeared last December after boarding a bus at St. Albans en route to the Vermont soldiers' home where he lived. In October, Paul Jepson, 8, Shaftesbury, wandered away from his mother truck at the Bennington town dump. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Frida Langer, 53, North Adams, Massachusetts, was reported missing. She had been hunted in the Somerset woods. So that was the end of this newspaper article from December 21st, 1950. Now, let's pause on the newspaper clippings and let's go back to my review, shall we? And to end the search for Martha, she was found in Virginia under a different name. And now, I want to also clarify, the Martha I am now talking about is, yes, the real missing 16-year-old that was hitchhiking from Bonneville to Manchester. Alright? So I just want to clarify that. So I want to reread this again. Sorry about that. But I feel like this is very important. And then I'm going to do the last newspaper clipping. And then we will finish up the review with the conclusion. And to end the search for Martha Jeanette Jones, she was found in Virginia under a different name. Police were led to Virginia from the couple that gave Martha a lift to Rhinebeck, New York. This couple had received a letter stating that she'd gone under the assumed name of Joanne Winters. Strangely, Mr. and Mrs. Lester Jones, the parents of Martha Jeanette Jones, did not want to go and pick up their daughter. And as a result, the Vermont police told authorities in Virginia that there's no reason to keep the girl in custody. So this sounds very suspicious, doesn't it? Now, let's pause on the review and go back to the newspaper clipping, shall we? Now, this actual newspaper was published in 1950, December 21st, and this one is called, or entitled, Missing Bonneville Girl is Located. Martha Jones was working under an assumed name in Virginia. Burton student had hitchhiked south. And then it goes on and says, Martha Jeanette Jones, the Bonneville girl, who was a junior at Burton, and who had been missing from her home since November 6, 1950, has been located. She had been working as a waitress under an assumed name in Accotink. I'm probably butchered that town name, but for those wondering, it's Accotink, Virginia. The 16-year-old girl was picked up on Monday by Virginia police. The girl's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Lester Jones, have decided not to go down to Virginia to get the girl, according to William Roberts of the State Police and Vermont Authority. Wired, Virginia police saying there was no reason for keeping the girl in custody. Accotink, if I'm saying that right, the Accotink, is a small town about 15 miles from Washington, D.C., and about 30 miles from Fort Belvoir. On the night of November 6th, Martha started on a hitchhiking trip to the Army base, getting a ride as far as Rhinebeck, New York, with a Bennington couple. Martha was located through the efficient investigation of the Vermont State Police. They checked friends in Manchester and found one woman who had received a letter from the girl, which furnished enough information to enable Vermont police to put Virginia authorities on her trail. In Virginia, Martha was going by the name of Joanne Winters. This was the name she gave Mr. and Mrs. Truman Maury of Bennington, who gave the girl a ride to Rhinebeck, New York. And that is the end of the newspaper clipping. So, to conclude my review of Shirley Jackson's The Missing Girl short story, this short story can be inspired by the article mentioned above. We can speculate that Shirley was trying to write about the young boy who went missing in 1950. If we swap the gender of Paul Jepson and add 4 years to his age, we have a young girl. She attends a summer camp, just like the story to move ahead with inspiration of what true events occurred throughout the 5 years of strangeness. Bloodhound, search and rescue, volunteers, helicopters, we can place these within the story. The twist, though? Leaving the reader questioning if these people or this character even existed. Finally, if we look at both Paula, who was 18, and Paul was 8, the character's age in this short tale is 13. This makes her older than Paul. She is also younger than Paula. It's a nice middle-aged number between the two that went missing. Again, I want to state Paula Weldon disappeared on December 1st, 1946, while Paul Jepson disappeared October 12th, 1950. And finally, I strongly believe that this short story is actually inspired by Martha's hitchhiking experience. She was found in a different state during the tale. The fictional father mentioned that some of their children were in different parts of the United States. That is my review of Shirley Jackson's short story, The Missing Girl. If you'd like to check out more reviews that I have done, especially Shirley Jackson's second novel, Hang the Man, that was loosely based on Paula Weldon's disappearance back in 1950 and inspired by some of Shirley Jackson's own college experience, you should check out Hang the Man. I hope you enjoyed. I hope there's more to come. And then for everybody else, as of this recording, this is Shirley Jackson's birthday today, December 14th, 2025. And I wanted to make this and go out for her birthday as a tribute for her memory and her stories, to continue on that have inspired us from not just her life in general, but real events that have happened. Because in the end, we can all write true crime, and we can even write our best work. It just all takes is just finding that special place and write it.